Okay, so we're going to be creating this little game. So it involves dodging the enemies. You have 3 lives, and when you get to no lives, the game is over. So I'm going to quit out of the game and create a new project. Make sure it's Windows Forms app for C#. And I'm going to call this Dodge the Shapes. Now, first step is we're just going to customize our main form. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to change the background color to something a bit more useful. Let's have it say a little bit of blue background. I could use an image if I wanted to. I can change the text for the menu, and then customize some of the sizes. So I'm going to just set this to say be 1280 by 300. No, let's just change it to 1280 by 800. And choose these, and I'm going to force the minimum maximum sizes to be exactly the same. So I've got that size exactly the same. And change auto scale mode to none so it doesn't resize. And I've got basic game set up. If I start that, we just have window pops up with our basic layout. You might want to change the position of that so I can adjust the location and where it's going to appear on the screen. But that's it for now. Okay, next we want to get our player character and get that moving around on the screen. So I'm going to use a picture box for this. I'm just going to drag it on and I'm going to customize it, changing its colors. So I can actually go and edit the RGB values here. Let's just have, let's go old school, but CGA 4-color, cyan, magenta, black and black. So got our shape. I'm going to modify that. I want to change its variable name to be more descriptive, so it's going to be called the player. I'm going to position it at X is 100 and Y is 400. And let's make its size a little bit smaller as well. 75 by 50, that looks good enough. Okay, so I've got my little player object. At the moment it's not going to move, so I'm going to need to add some code to get it moving. So I'm going to click on the form, highlight that, go into the events mode, and I'm going to scroll down until I find key down, and I'm going to double click on that to add the form 1 key down event. So now what I want to detect, if e.keycode is equal to keys.up, so if the up key is pressed, do something. So that's going to be move up. Now what we need here is the player object. Dot top gets us the top left corner, X position, is going to become player.top minus however much I want to move. Now if I click on start and run this, if I press the up key, it moves up. At the moment, nothing happens when I press down. But I can reuse this code, so I'm just going to copy that, paste it, and rather than keys.up, it's going to be down. Let's call that move down. And plus 10. You've got to remember, on the y-axis, the positive and negatives have been flipped around. Now, if I want to change how much it moves, I could manually type it in here. But I'm going to want to set up some global variables, which mean I can just have a variable that I can control that once. And I'm going to make integer. Let's call it player movement. It's assigned to, let's say, set to 50 to start with. And that's going to control the movement of the player. So at the moment, rather than -10, I'm going to use that variable player movement. And if I run this, you'll be able to see that it's going to jump by a whole 50 pixels. You do get to a problem where it pops off the edge of the screen. I'm going to fix that in a little bit, but I'm just going to reset that back to 10. What we would now notice is it moves in a lot smaller movements. So we've got a code for moving the player. Now I want to loop it once it's off the edge of the screen. Now the top corner is position 0, and the bottom is the height of the client rectangle. So what we're going to do is if player at top position is less than this dot actually it's less than 0, so that's the top edge. Now player at top just gets the top left corner. We also need to have add on the height of the player object, so that the whole thing is off the edge of the screen. So if that happens, then I want to loop to the bottom. So player.top will become player.top will be this dot client rectangle dot height. Now if we test that, at the moment we've only added it for the out, so we should be looping around. At the moment it's not working the other way because I need to add that code in. What you'll notice is things will become quite similar, but with just some slight changes in the logic of the bottom edge of the screen. So we don't want it to move to there, we want to move to position 0 minus player height, so it's hiding up off the edge of the screen. Now the logic here is going to change. We just want the top left corner this time to be greater than the client rectangle height. So actually if you look at the logic, it sort of just changes around what's happening here is what we were setting it to, and what's happening here is what the condition was before. Let's test that. Always go through and test each little step. So it loops around that way and loops around that way. So from here we've got complete looping for our player movement, and that is all completely finished. Now I want to get these enemy objects moving from right to left, or whichever direction I want them to run in. So what we're going to now do is I'll just switch back to our project. Oh, got dodge game. So dodge the shapes. Now what we're going to need to do is set up some variables to store these, and we're going to get these to happen dynamically. So we're going to set up some global variables. So I'm going to create, we're going to be using the picture box options, but we're going to create an array of them, the enemies, and we're going to have another array of integers, which is going to store the speed of each enemy. and we want another integer, which is going to have our number of enemies. I'm not going to set any values to these initially. Actually, let's say we're going to have 10 enemies. Now, where I want to go is add this code so that we're going to set this all up when the game runs. So I'm going to go back to my design view and just double click on the form, and we should get a private void form1 underscore load. This is going to happen when the form actually loads up. And now we want to set everything up. So I want to create a new array of enemies. Picture box bracket num enemies. So that will create however many enemies are stored here. So in this case it will create 10 of them. If I want to change that, I can just modify it once there, and the whole rest of the application will update. And we also need to create the array for the enemy speed. This is of type integer. Now we're going to need to populate and create this. So for, we're going to use a for loop to iterate around, I being short for index, while I is less than the number of enemies. Each time we finish the loop, we'll add one onto it. Let's add a comment there. We're going to set them up. Now, I want to create a random size for each of these enemies and the position. So, but first we're going to create one. So enemies at position I, or index I. So this is not to do where it's actually located. And make a new blank picture box with its default settings. And I'm going to customize this. I'm going to actually copy that because I'm going to be reusing it a lot. Background color, and I'm just going to set these, let's say, to black. And this is actually going to loop through and actually create all 10 of those, but at the moment they're going to be all in the same place. So it's just going to look like there's only one of them. And nothing appeared off the side of the screen. So let's actually just force them to be a location. Let's say so we've got our top and left properties, so that should make them appear in the top left corner. Okay. And let's set some height for them. Width. And what we now need to do is actually add this to the option. So controls.add, and we just pass it the name of the object that I want to add. Now if I run this, we should have in the nice top left corner that object that's been created 10 times, and I can modify these and change where I want them to go. Okay, as you can see, but I don't want those to appear automatically there and have to hard code it. I want to randomly choose them. So I'm going to create a random number generator. So I'm going to go back up to the global variables and use the random, make a variable called RNG, and that's a new type random. So that makes a new random number generator. Putting it there because I can reuse it over and over. Now, rather than just having the top position. So we're going to position that to be anywhere using the random number generator. Next, between 0, which is the top, and this dot client rectangle dot height minus the height of the object. So we'll position it anywhere vertically along there. Now, this will use initially here the default height of the object. If I want to set that height first, I'm going to need to actually adjust that before I set that top position. So a lot of this is about working out the logic. And we're just going to hard code in. Next, they're going to be anywhere between sizes 10 and 50. And the width, we're just going to make them a square. So that will randomly position them along the height. Now if I run this, with left still being 0, so they'll just position these randomly along the left hand side. And some are overlapping, but that's okay, we're not too worried about that. Now, rather than position them on the left, we're going to put them off the edge of the screen. Client rectangle dot width. Now at the moment, when I do this, we're not actually going to be able to see them, because they're actually hidden off the edge over here. So what I now need to do is get these moving. And to achieve that, we're going to use a timer object. So I'm going to go to all Windows Forms, look for the timer, drag that on, let's rename that timer game, and double click on the timer. So this, each tick, so each time this occurs, something's going to happen. Now, when the game loads, I want to start that timer. So I'm going to have timer game dot enabled is true, and that will start the game running. Now, what I want to do is move each one of these. So I'm going to use that for loop. I just set to 0 while there's less than the number of enemies. Add one onto it. So while we're doing this, let's go and move them. Okay. Enemies.I, we're only going to worry about moving, changing the left and right. So that is going to need to be changed. This is where we have our enemy speed option. At the moment, I haven't actually set the speed, so I'm actually going to go back to that form 1 load. After I've set the width, let's set the speed. This is why you always want to sort of write down all the steps you actually need to include. So what I need to do here, enemy speed, back at I, let's do random number generator, and let's have this speed anything between 10 and 50. So we can play around with these, and we can play around with how often these ticks actually occur. A tick, by default I think it's every 10th of a second, but we can adjust that. So enemies.left is assigned to enemies minus the speed of that enemy. So let's start that and see what happens. So each enemy has had a random speed assigned to it, and is now moving from left to right. But once they all get off the edge of the screen, they don't loop back around. So we need to add in something similar to what's happened before. But it's not always going to happen. So we're going to come and do our check. enemies.i.left is less than 0. Now, we also need to add on the height, width. If it's off the edge, then move to the right hand side and reset. So if we go back up to that original, we've actually got our how to reset code there, so I'm just going to copy that and reuse it. And what we notice is when they loop back around, they come back. But they're coming back in the same position. We need to randomize that. So what we're going to do is take that previous information, the height and their random positions, and include that code here. So you can see they're appearing in, and now they're appearing and being reloaded in different positions. That makes for a bit more of a random sort of environment. Some of them are going a bit slow, so we might want to adjust those speeds. What we can also do is with our timer, we can adjust how often it actually updates using the interval property. So that is every 10 milliseconds. So this is probably going to be far too quick for us. If you have a look, yeah. But with a combination of changing the interval and potentially the speed, so we brought that down between say 1 and 10, we're probably going to get a more realistic sort of speed. Okay. So we've now got our game, everything's still looping around. We now are going to need to add in some way of detecting how we're actually going to get points. So what we're going to do is add a score in, and each time one of these objects goes off to the edge, we're going to get a point. So we need another global variable. Let's call this score, and it's going to be of type int, and let's set it to 0 initially. But we need a way of displaying that on the screen, so I'm going to add a couple of labels. You can choose where you want to include them. So I'm going to make that actually a bit bigger. Let's say 14 point. Looks decent enough. I'm going to have one. This is going to have the word score written on it. Let's position that top left. Leave that there. And I'm just going to copy it. I'm actually going to have a second label. Position that over here. Call that one label score. And I'm just going to set that to have X written on it, and I'm going to align the text on that top right. Now X tells me it's not been set yet, so I'm going to go back to our main method when it loads and set it up. So we're going to set the score initially to be 0 and change the text that's written on that label. Label score dot text. This time I've just got to give it an empty string just for ease of sake of converting. And now we should, when we run the game, it should pop up with a score of being 0. Brilliant. Now, how do we detect when it's popped off the edge? So we need to go back to a game timer. So I've got these enemies that are moving off to the edge. So I've actually got this here. This if statement is detecting if they're off the edge of the screen. So let's add in some code to give a point. And that is just score, it's assigned to score, +1. Let's run that. And we aren't updating. Reason being, the score value is updating, but we haven't updated what's on the screen, the label. So label score dot text is assigned to empty text plus score. So let's change that. So we can now see our scores are increasing, and we've basically got our first parts of the game. But we can't lose. There's no collision detection. So that's our next step, is adding in some collision detection. That's basically going to stop the game when we get hit. Okay, now we need to detect if the player has been hit. Now, the player is going to be on the screen, so we want to actually check that logically before we actually check if they're off the edge of the screen. So let's check for a player collision. So we're going to use an if statement, player.bounds, so basically the edges of the picture box. There's an intersects with function, enemies, each enemy dot bounds its location. So this will only happen if they collide. So we're just going to do a bit of testing by putting up a message box. It's just going to pop up the text hit. This is going to go a bit crazy, but we'll explain that in a second. We're going to get that message box popping up a number of times. So let's run this and have a look. So you can see each time it hits, it's appearing multiple times. If we want it to only happen once, when it collides, we need to stop that timer. So we can use the timer game.enabled. It's false, display it, and that is basically going to stop our game. What we can actually do is get it to show the message, whatever we want. Remember, we've been given, so let's have game over, environment.newline, add a new line, and let's put the score on. So let's run that and see what happens. So we've got some points, and it tells us game over and what our score was. So we've actually got pretty much a complete working game here. What we might want to do is add some lives in. So we're going to have a global variable, and set what our lives are going to be. I'm going to need to put that information up on the screen again. So let's just take these. Run those up nicely, except that one. It's not going to be label 3, let's call it label lives. Back to our form, go back to our main function for setting it up. So now our live set. So now I can always go back and reset everything. Okay, let's just check that our lives are being displayed correctly. Awesome. And we need to change that writing there from text to lives. Let's go and run it and check it. Got some points, and we can tell the lives, but those lives are being detected. So go back down to where our code is. So at the moment, time is enabled false. So what I now need to do lose a life, update the lives on the screen, text, so it'll update the number, and after that I need to basically go and check to see if I've got any lives left. So if lives are less than 0, then I want to show that message. Now let's run that and see what happens. Oh, our game stopped. Reason being is we've stopped the timer, but once we've taken the life away, so if we've still got any lives left, then we need to actually enable it. Let's run this. Oh, it's taken away too many lives. So we've got another little problem that occurs here. And what that is that the object, the enemy is still on the screen, so it's still actually making contact. So if we intersect, we need to remove that hit object and reset its position. Thankfully, we've already done that before. So it's off the edge of the screen. So I'm just going to copy that code and paste it in. So I'm basically resetting. So let's try that and see how we go. Okay, scores are going up. Oh, yep, that one's gone and moved. Let's reset it. Okay, I've got no lives left. 0, and I've got a game over because my lives are now negative, and it's giving me the message. So that basically concludes making a very sort of simple game, objects moving from right to left, and you being able to control the player character. So let's modify it, see if you can get different shapes, adding in your own graphics, and a lot of extra features. You might want to choose your own images, texts, and fonts. Even try getting them some coming in vertically, adding a movement so you can move in 4 directions. Okay, enjoy!